There are 2 points I'd like to make about inspiration, 2 separate points. Mm-hmm. One is Nikola Tesla, the man who gave us alternating current and lit the world and gave us radio. Radio was invented by Nikola Tesla. Marconi had nothing to do with it. He stole. He was hired by Nikola Tesla. He went to Nikola Tesla and asked for a job, and Nikola Tesla, being a generous man, gave this young man a job to help him, and his name was Marconi. And Marconi stole from Nikola Tesla, and I know what that's like. Nikola Tesla had written out how to create something called radio, how to do it electrically. And, but Marconi took those papers behind Tesla's back and went to the, trademark department and trademarked the idea, copyrighted it, or whatever you want to call it, and then put it out there into the public. And then the big companies came to Marconi and said, wow, we want to do this. So they invented radio. And so we're told that Marconi invented radio. No, he stole it from his master. He stole it from the man who gave him a job. And I know what that's all about. I've had that happen. And so the idea of inspiration, when Nikola Tesla was in his late 80s, very old man, he was given a big awards dinner in New York, and where the world was thanking him for all the incredible things that he had given to the world. And he said at the dinner, he gave a speech. Nikola Tesla spoke to the audience, and he said, I have to tell you how I got my ideas to do what I've done. He said, every evening before bed, I will put a notepad on the little table next to my bed with a pen or a pencil. And he said that every morning when I wake up, there's a written invention on the pad. Somebody comes into my room at night and writes down an invention, and the next morning I get up and it's all written out for me, and so I just go to my laboratory and follow the instructions, and I invented radio, or I invented alternating current, or I made this invention or that invention. And today, Nikola Tesla has lit the world and given us radio and all kinds of wonderful things this man gave to the world. But he said he was inspired by someone writing it down when he was sleeping. And so that's inspiration. To inspire comes from the word spire, to like perspire, inspire. And so spire is to breathe together. Breathing is spire. And so someone was breathing into him their ideas and coming from somewhere else. Well, that was one point I wanted to make about inspiration, is it doesn't necessarily come from you. It comes from out there. And second, it was I think it was called a TED talk on the web. The company is TED, and they invite different scientific people and different interesting people to give lectures, and they're usually only about 20 minutes long. Mm-hmm. And this lady doctor was very interesting. She talked about how the brain works and why do humans have a brain? Why do all living things have a brain? And she said, your brain as a human has nothing to do with your creativity, with your ideas and your understanding of things. The brain is designed to do only one thing and one thing only. It is to control the mechanisms of your body. It controls the electrical impulses that go to your muscles so that you can walk, run, so you can climb. It controls your body's muscles. It controls the movement of the human body. It controls the blinking of the eye, the swallowing of water. It controls everything in your body. It's nothing more than a controlling mechanism for your human body. But when it comes to your imagination, your creativity, she said, the ideas and concepts that come out of you, we have, as scientists, no idea in the world where your spiritual perceptions come from, where your thoughts come from. We have no idea at all. All that we know is it has nothing to do with your brain. Your brain does not give you inspiration. It merely takes care of your body. And so therefore, where do your thoughts come from? When the great composers were composing the beautiful music, where do those ideas for the music come from? When you get people who are writing profoundly important books, and we say they were truly inspired, well, we know it wasn't in their mind. It came from outside of their brain. So it implies that our inspiration we are being overshadowed, is the term that I use. Overshadowed by some kind of a higher intelligence in the universe. Something out there is feeding us information, and it's called inspiration. We are being inspired. And some people are just naturally pick up on inspiration from out there, wherever it comes from, and they can create beautiful music, beautiful art. They can design rockets. They can design lasers, televisions, all kinds of strange and wonderful imaginations in the human mind, but it does not come from your brain. It comes from out there.
Well,
and that's right. And so many times we know, it's happened to me so many times. In my life, I have been confronted by a problem that other people cannot handle. They can't figure out what to do, even in building and secular work. You're confronted by something that happens, and how do you fix it? Well, we don't know how to fix it. Well, some people are just inspired. They say, well, wait a minute. Why don't you just do this and connect this here and then plug this in over here, and there it is. It works. Well, how did you know how to do that? I don't know. I just figured it out. It just occurred to me. Well, how did it occur to you? I was inspired. Somebody or something out there told me. When I was looking at it, it told me in my mind how this thing worked, and I was inspired to do it. And so when you listen to the composers of music, you can tell they were inspired. They didn't just read it out of a book. They knew how the mathematical tones work. They know how music works. And that's a incredibly dark subject, how the tones of music work and how to put them together to cause people to be inspired to do good things, to do bad, to do incredible things with music. Music can be inspirational. I mean, they play drums and certain kinds of music for the military, and it makes a man feel like he's a man. He can defend himself. He can defend the country because of this music. And it's just an inspiration for military inspiration. And of course, in Hollywood, you have what is called programmed music. It's called programming music. In a movie, when something evil is going to happen, you get a certain kind of music. When something is going to be funny and silly and to be laughed at, you get that kind of music behind it. So it's programming your mind with music, so that you are inspired to get the idea out of the movie. So inspiration is not part of what the brain does. Inspiration comes from outside the brain, which means whatever it is out there, when I talk to audiences about God, I think it's important to define your terms. because so many times other people have other ideas about something you're talking about. If you talk about love, many different people have many different ideas about what that word means. Mm-hmm. And so when I talk about God, I believe that the human family, the human people on the earth, their brains are a computer, where it's an incredible computer. It's alive. And that computer runs on wiring. And we're told that our blood vessels and our nerves are miles and miles of nerve endings in our body. That's the wiring for the computer to all the body, to control the body. The brain needs to be able to send messages out to certain nerves for you to do certain things. And so the brain is a computer, and I believe that what we call God is some kind of for a lack of a better term, some sort of a Wi-Fi unit, whereby you can have 100 different computers in a room, and they're all on one Wi-Fi unit, which means all 100 computers can be doing 100 different things, tuning into different places and doing different things, and they're all getting it from one source, from a Wi-Fi unit. So in my mind, I think of some sort of an electromagnetic force in the universe that is brilliant, is highly intelligent, is extraordinarily well informed, and it is communicating with us like a Wi-Fi does to computers, because all of us have brains in their computers. And so something is guiding our destiny. Something out there is guiding our thinking. And if you've ever seen a flock of birds, large flocks of birds with thousands of birds, and you see them all flying in one direction, and instantly, in an absolute 1 second instant, they all the birds turn and go a different way. And they all then flip back and turn and go a different way. How come all of the birds knew to turn at that very 1 second point, and they all turned and went a different way together, like the fish do? We call it schools of fish. And I've seen it where the fish are thousands of fish, and they're all sailing along together, and instantly, all of a sudden, they all go in a different direction. How is that possible? Each one of them will, can go wherever they want. No, they can't. They go together, and when they're supposed to turn, they will. Everybody will turn instantly. It's some kind of an inspiration, which I tend to think is something like some sort of a Wi-Fi unit. I'm just using that very loosely. Some kind of a communication with a higher mind in the universe that men have called God. And when you understand the great composers during the Middle Ages, the great composers in the Renaissance composers, if you understand what they were doing, they're not just picking sounds that sound nice. No, it was mathematical. It was very deep understanding of the creation of the universe, the breathing in and the breathing out of the universe. It was a very extraordinary story about how the great composers did what they did and composed the music. It had to do with an occult, heavy-duty science of vibrations, rhythms, and how and they could change the whole concept of a nation by music. I mean, the Germans used the music from Wagner, and it inspired, and America has music that inspires the nation because there is some kind of a mathematical science to it. There's a science to putting music together. And the great composers realize that, and today the master musicians today know that you need to understand how the universe vibrates, and how and Pythagoras and the Pythagoreans, they understood the mathematics of the universe and how to write music. It's an incredible story of how to be inspired. You have to know what you're doing when you're a composer putting music together, because it's going to affect the brain waves of the people of the world when they hear it. And it's really an incredible story. And I've heard people explaining how the great masters wrote their music. It's very, very deep. It's not just listening to pretty sound. No.
Well, right.
They did it with the vibrational. They knew how it would be vibrating in your mind and what your brain would do with this particular vibratory frequency. One incredible story about how the brain communicates with the heavens, and the heavens communicate with you. And we know that the planets and the sun and the moon affect your brain. And the planets all have a resonant frequency, and each one of those planets, when you were born, affected your mind. When you were born, you came out of your mother into the world, and the sun has a profound electrical field on the earth that is causing incredible stuff to happen. Our weather, the moon affects people. It affects the female. It affects her periods once a month is caused by the moon. The moon pulls the oceans of the world. We know that the moon affects the oceans. Why? Because they're water, and the moon affects water. This is why your body is like 76% water. So how does the moon affect you at the full moon? Well, it causes you to get silly and crazy, sometimes really crazy. So we call you a lunatic. Why? Because the moon is affecting your blood. It's affecting your brain. The vibrations in your mind are being affected by the sun, the moon, Mars, Jupiter. And so women are from Venus and men are from Mars, meaning our minds operate differently because of the way we're born and who we are and the vibrations in the brain. It's a very big subject about inspiration, and the inspiration comes from out there. And as a matter of fact, during the Middle Ages, the early Middle Ages, the word for the stars was, we spell star, S-T-A-R. But in the Middle Ages, the church, the word star was A-S-T-A-R, Astar. So in Astar, we take the A off and just spell it S-T-A-R. But no, it was originally an Astar, the little lights in the heavens were Astars. And so there was even a Jewish family, a very famous Jewish family called the Astars. Astar was a star. And so the idea was developed during the Middle Ages in the church that if you don't follow the Astars, if you don't know how the Astars affect you, because they do affect you, it's called astrology, and most people laugh at it. Well, there's nothing to laugh at. The stars do affect you. And so you're being affected by the Astars. But if you don't know that, your life is going to be a disastar. And that's where we get the word a disaster. Disastar means you don't follow the Astars, because the ancient peoples used the stars to navigate around the world on the high seas. They would use the stars. And so if they use the stars to navigate the world on the high seas, the idea was expressed in religion that you should use the stars to navigate your life because they affect you. And if you don't know how to use the stars, then your life is going to be a disaster. A disaster, because you don't realize, you've never been told, and you've been lied to and misunderstand, and you don't know how the stars and the planets affect you. You are a part of the universe. And the moon affects your blood. The moon affects a woman. The moon affects your water in your body. That's why we call people lunatics. So there's so much more to learn about inspiration. It's an incredible subject. It has a wide array of entries into that subject, which is just astounding how much mathematics and vibrational frequencies all affect your brain and gives you the idea that you can create out of nothing. You can create things. It just is in your mind to do it. You just were inspired to do it. I've written things in my time that people have read and they said, my God, this was inspired. I know that when I was writing it, I didn't realize what I was writing. I felt it. I didn't know intellectually. I felt the knowledge, and I was writing down what I was feeling. And when I was through with it, people read it and said, my God, this is inspired. What do you mean inspired? Well, I mean, I just felt something leading me to write the way I wrote. Right. And therefore you can call it inspiration. I've listened to professional musicians explaining the pipe organ and the organ and how, it reverberates off the walls and the ceilings and it comes back to you, and how music needs to be presented to you in a theater a certain way. And there's a very big difference between the vibratory frequencies of real incredible music and what we got today called cyber. Mm-hmm. Cyber is very dangerous to the human brain. Cyber, you're hearing music on the disc, and it's you play it on a computer and you're hearing this beautiful music, but no, it's cyber. It's not the same. And there have been some very important documents written by doctors in Europe talking about hearing music on a cyber machine as opposed to a record, which is a vibration playing on a record. The records are the right way to hear music. Cyber is not. Cyber is not the way to hear music. It affects your brain, and we're being affected by cyber. Today we know that through our telephones and through our cell phones. Cyber is not that great. It's an incredible invention, but it's not that great for hearing, especially for humans listening to music. Cyber is not that good. Incidentally, there is a very big company back east that is now reviving the idea of records. They are now pressing records and taking all the so-called music of today and actually putting them onto vinyl records. And it's a big company. You can go on the web and check it out and find out the company that's producing music now on records, and they're producing the record players, because they've come to the conclusion that, to really appreciate the beauty of music, you have to do it on a record. You can't do it with cyber. So you have to scientifically understand how digital affects the human brain through the ears. You have to understand that. Then you can appreciate why the vibration on a record is different than on the vinyl is different than in the digital, and why hearing it on a vinyl record is far, far superior. I think that the masters of this world, the guys at the very top of the world, the scientists who are designing our world for us, because we don't understand how it works. And so the masters who are the real brains are designing our world for us, designing computers and rockets and lasers and all the other high technology. They are working toward one goal, and that is to homogenize the whole of life on the earth. Bring everybody together in one place, no matter what race, color, creed, where you are from. It doesn't matter. They're making all humans conform to one thing. We all will one day all be able to communicate together, and we will all be under one government, one religion, one concept, and there will be no more individuality, no more of this human individualism as going. It's getting, just understand, human creativity and individuality is slowly but surely, methodically and scientifically being weeded out of the human race. We're losing our individuality. We're losing our humanity. We're losing our minds. We're losing our country. We've lost our freedoms. We're just losing, period, to our superior people who are working to entrap us, to cause us to live the way they want us to, and they don't want any individuality. They are not interested in having any nationalities. The Italians being Italian for Italy, and the French being French for France, and the British being English for England. No, they don't want that. They want everybody to be amalgamated into one big, happy, criminal family, one big family on the earth where there is no allegiances to anything, not to your mother, not to your family, not to your country, nothing. You have your allegiance to the masters who run the human race. That's why they're digitizing everything and bringing us all together. Whether you want to be together or not, they are amalgamating everything. And so I think it's interesting, and I think it's very important that when we use terms, we know where they come from and understand why we're using those words and terms, because so many people are misled because they don't know what the words mean, and the religious leaders are depending on that so that you don't ask them any questions that they can't answer. So they will fill you with incredible stories, but if you ask them questions and you're really thinking and have done your homework and start studying the subject of theology and where these ideas have come from, you're going to find that the people who are leading the religious movements around the world do not know where these ideas have come from. They're just regurgitating what they were taught, and they have no idea because it's been so camouflaged, so covered up that you would never, ever suspect where the ideas that you believe have come from and what they really represent. I think that this is probably one of the most interesting parts of religion, is what do these stories actually represent? Where did they come from? And what did they mean in the original story that was borrowed from? And when you start doing that kind of research, checking to see where these ideas were first expressed and what did they mean then, and now see how we're looking at them today and accepting them today, you will see we really need to go back and do our homework. So that's what I try and do. I try and get people to think about what they say they believe and tell you the truth. And I know that doing that, sometimes you can make an enemy, but like the Apostle Paul said in the scriptures, am I supposed to be your enemy because I tell you the truth? Or have I become your enemy because I told you the truth? And that's exactly what happens when you tell people things they don't want to hear. You are no longer their friend. They don't want to hear from you again because you are causing them to wake up, and they're not interested in waking up. They want to stay where they are and believe what they want, and they'll be happy. And so if you come in, I've used this illustration before. If you were sound asleep and you're very, very tired and you're very deeply asleep, and someone comes into your bedroom quietly and slips up close to your bed and turns on a 600-watt bulb next to you, it's going to startle you. And you're obviously going to move your head away from the light and guard your eyes so the light won't hit your eyes because it's too bright. And that's what happens when you tell people something they don't want to hear. They turn their head. They don't want to hear it. They put their hands up in front of their eyes. They don't want to see it. And why? Because if you're telling them the truth is light. Light and truth are one of the same things in the Bible. So if you're going to tell somebody something, you're going to enlighten them. And most people don't want to be enlightened. They don't care to know. They want to be happy with doing what they're doing, and it's not important to them. It's not really that important. And so they just want to believe what they want to believe. It's not important to know the truth, unless, of course, when you die, if you're going to come before a creator and be judged, well, that's different. But that's your problem. You'll find out when you leave this world what's going to happen to you. But I have always wanted to know the truth, because the truth will set you free. And believe me, it's an incredible story about when you start looking into where these ideas that are written in religion, spirituality, and the Bible and the holy books, where they came from and what they actually mean, and how they are still being misunderstood today. For thousands of years, we've been misled. And Christianity especially, and Judaism the Jewish religion today has no idea in this world where the precepts and concepts and belief systems in Judaism actually came from. And I have said before that if you knew where these ideas have come from and what they represented when they first came on the scene thousands of years ago, you would be shocked to know what you are involved in. And so the Jesuits were found in the mid-1500s, and I believe that the Jesuits are responsible for founding so many of the major religions today. So many of these religions have been founded by Jesuits. Of that, I mean, the Masonic order is a Catholic Jesuit order that was founded. We call it today Freemasonry. I think it has a Jesuit foundation. The Catholic Church Jesuits founded what we call the Freemasonic Lodge. I am sure that the Jesuits founded Freemasonry, and I'm sure that Freemasonry, in the hands of the Jesuits, helped finance and organize and direct Jehovah's Witnesses, Seventh-day Adventists, Christadelphians, Worldwide Church of God, Christadelphians. So many different cults of Christianity in America are actually Masonic cults, and founded by Freemasons and financed by Freemasons and run by Freemasons, and Freemasonry itself is run by the Jesuits. And so I think that there's been a continual feeding of poison into the human society, causing people to hate each other, causing people to be racist against each other, and never realizing that it's so that you will not look at your real enemy. The real enemy is the one that's right there in your midst and doing all this to you, so that you will become so weak and so downtrodden that you will not be you won't be any competition to the enemy that's already inside your gates. And by enemy inside the gates of America, I mean the one group that the founding fathers back in 1700s, when they founded the United States of America as a republic, not a democracy, they founded the United States as a republic. They said there were two things that the founding fathers did not want in this country, and it's written that way. The two groups that they did not want coming into this country were lawyers and the Catholic Church, the Vatican. The Vatican was not allowed to operate on the property we call the United States of America, because the church realizes Jesus said, a house divided against itself can't stand. It will not last. A house divided against itself will not continue to exist. And so if you are living in a house where everybody hates each other, just know that it's not going to last for long. I believe Judaism is a creation of the Knights Templars, the Masonic Lodge inside the Catholic Church. The Knights Templars are the Masonic order of Knights Templars. The identical cross that we think of today existed all over the world in the ancient and prehistoric world of Egypt, Central America, South America, the temples of Incas and Machu Picchu and all kinds of incredible places in Central and South America. You'll find the Christian cross, and especially in India, Africa, they always had the cross. But something interesting about the Christian cross in relation to religion is that for the first 600 years of Christianity, there was no symbol in any church anywhere on the earth. Nowhere was there a picture of a man hanging on a cross. The man hanging on a cross we call Jesus was nowhere ever seen before the 600 AD. 600 years after Christianity was founded, it was decided by the church that to make this more believable, you should put a man on the cross because more people will have sympathy if they see a man suffering. And so they put a man on the cross, and that's the first time in the Catholic Church you find a man hanging on a cross, is in the 6th century. 6th century, 600 years after Christianity was founded, they finally put a man on the cross. So what does that tell you? For 600 years, there was no man on a cross. And now today, it's everywhere. And when the sun goes down into the southern atmosphere, into the southern hemisphere, it goes down to Brazil. And when it hits the lowest point in the sky, it's the summer down there because it's winter up here in the northern hemisphere. And so if people in the southern hemisphere down in Rio and down in South America, when it's the summer, you go out at night and you will see the sun when it's setting. And there's a set of stars, I think it's like 5 or 6 stars, and they make up a perfect cross, just like a Christian cross. They make up a perfect cross. It is called, go on the web and type in Southern Cross. The Southern Cross constellation is a totally cross made up of 5 or 6 stars, and it's called the Southern Cross. And that's why the sun dies, and that's why we say that God's son is dead, because he's died down south. He's no longer of any value to us. We're freezing up here with ice and snow, and we're freezing, and the sun is gone. Yes, and also when you hear the word kingdom of God, this is something I thought was important. When you hear someone talk about the kingdom of God, we humans have a habit of putting different life forms into some kind of a family arrangement. Like fish are in schools, ants are in colonies, cows are in herds. We put all kinds of living creatures into different families. So what kind of a creature do we humans say are in a kingdom? We are talking about an animal kingdom. The animals are in a kingdom. And so therefore when you say the kingdom of God it goes back to an animal. And in the ancient Greek, the word animal was connected to the word zoology. Zoo. That's where you find animals, is in a zoo. And so the kingdom of God is the zodiac, zodiac, the kingdom of animals. And there's 12 of them. In my Father's abode, there are many houses. Yeah, there's 12 of them. And they're called the kingdom of God, the 12 animal houses around us. So in the ancient world, the stars were called astars. They spell it A-S-T-A-R, astar. We don't do it that way. We spell it S-T-A-R. But the ancient peoples in the beginning of Christianity in English in Europe, they spell star A-S-T-A-R, and therefore the church said, if you don't understand the A-S-T-A-R, the astars, if you don't understand their influence on us, the astars, then your life is going to be a disastar. And today, that's what we have. All over America, people are living a disastrous life. Why? Because they don't understand the heavens. That's where God is. And in my Father's house are many mansions. No, a mansion is where you live. And so therefore in my Father's abode are many houses of the zodiac, the astars. And so if you don't understand the zodiac, your life is going to be a disastar. The Messiah is a spiritual work. It's a spiritual dynamics, not a man. There's not going to be a man coming to save the world. Nobody's going to come to save the world. it's going to be very difficult for Jesus to come back when he's never been here to start with. So Messiah goes back to, it's the Messiah, word Messiah goes back to the Egyptians. They're the ones that came up with the idea of a Messiah. And so the Egyptians gave us that term, Messiah. And so the sun is always going to come back as the invincible sun. It's always coming back. Even though it goes down south and it dies in the winter, it always comes back to us. So he is the invincible sun. And you don't own it. God owns it. So it's God's sun, the light of the world. And there's only one sun, thank God. We don't have 6 suns. So there's only one sun. So he's the only begotten of the Lord. God has given us one son, and he's our Savior. I think that we're way too far gone. I don't think the people want to hear the truth. I don't think they want to hear. I do believe that there's going to be a lot of people who will want to know and who will start doing their homework. And that's why I'm offering them my website where they can start. If you really want to know, go to Jordan Maxwell Show. 3 words. Jordan Maxwell Show, and join my research society. And this is where I'm giving you all of this information. But I don't think the world is interested. I don't think the people of this world are even a slight bit interested. They want to fill their bellies with food and beer and watch the ball game and entertainment, and they couldn't care less what the real truth is. But if you're supposed to know, you will know. Knocking, it will be open. Seeking, you will find. And asking, it will be given. At 19, 20, and 21, 22 years old, just a young man, I was searching for truth, and I thought they had it. And they were always very kind and very courteous. And I liked the people, and so I kind of hung out with them, and then eventually I joined them. And I had quite an experience when I began to wake up and find out who Jehovah's Witnesses really were. It really affected me deeply, as it does everyone, all the different witnesses who wake up and find out that Jehovah's Witnesses are not who they say they are. They don't have what they say they have, and they have been misled on an incredible level. And so I found out a lot about Jehovah's Witnesses as an organization, as a people, and I am amazed at how far gone the Jehovah's Witness organization really is. And so I could talk a little bit about my personal experiences with them and the things which I found out. And when you're 19 years old, like I was as a 19-year-old, I'm in a large city that I've never been in before. I come to California from a small city in Florida. I ended up in Los Angeles in 1959 as a 19-year-old boy. And I was living in North Hollywood working, and I had a little room. But the way I came into Jehovah's Witnesses was not like everybody else. I became very close friends with the neighbors next door to me. I was living in North Hollywood, and there was some really nice people, a nice lady in her family living next door, and they always had barbecues in the backyard. And they would always, when they would see me, they would invite me over, and I would go over and sit and have lunch with them or dinner. And I enjoyed their company, and they always were very kind and courteous to me. And then one day, one evening, the lady asked me, she said, why don't you come and live here at our place? Because, if you've got a room there, just come over here. I've got 3 or 4 bedrooms that are empty. You can come live here with us. And I was always over there having dinner with them in the evenings, and I was, always visiting with them, and they would do favors for me, and I'd run errands for them. And so it was kind of like, they were kind of like good friends that I could move in with. So as a 19-year-old kid, I did. And they were very kind and courteous, and I ended up going to work for her. So I could quit the job I had. I went to work for her, and she was always very busy in the motion picture community. So I was invited to be a driver for her. So I drove her car for her because she was always busy doing things for the motion pictures. And so I was driving for her, and that was my job. And so she was paying me, and I had a nice place to live, and my own room and my own bathroom, etc. And I could drive around town for her. And so it was kind of like a fun thing to do. I had my own room. It didn't cost me anything. I stayed there and ate with them, breakfast, lunch, and dinner. And I was driving her car to run around to the motion picture studios and meeting all kinds of impressive people. And so I just kind of eventually fell in with this family, and they were always very nice to me. And then I discovered that they were Jehovah's Witnesses, and I went with them to some of the meetings, and the other people there, they were very nice too. And so as a 19-year-old kid, I just kind of fell into being a Jehovah's Witness. I was accepted by that family. I was accepted by the whole family as a dear friend, and I could help them out. I could help her out because she needed a driver to run errands for her, and she didn't have time to do her work and be driving too. And so it was kind of fun. I was able to drive for her, and that put me in relation to all the motion picture studios, all the entertainment center in Hollywood. Everybody knew me because she was very important in the motion picture community, and she was working continually, and I was running errands for her. And because of that, I was able to meet all kinds of major movie stars, and it was kind of like a real trip for me, to be able to run into the big studios and talk with the major movie stars for her, and making a few dollars every week, and having free lunch and dinners and dinners and breakfast with them, with the family. And so I just kind of fell into the family. And so the family was always very, very nice to me and very courteous, and would always take care of me. And so as a 19-year-old kid, I loved it. I loved having a place that I knew I was safe in, and I was doing something of value to help someone. Right. And so I just grew into going to the meetings with Jehovah's Witnesses, and that's how I got in. But because of my curiosity that I was inborn in me to begin to research and study everything, I began to very quickly start reading into the history of Jehovah's Witnesses, where they came from, and doing all the research on religion and theology. Right. And then eventually, when I got involved, I began to see what everybody else who has been an ex-Jehovah's Witness, I began to see little cracks of hypocrisy and double standards, where the men who were leading the organization, or the elders in the congregation, were not very well informed. They weren't very well read. They didn't really know much about the history of religions. They didn't know anything about the history of the ancient religions of the Middle East. They were not very well read about much of anything. They just were very important people, and whatever they said was the absolute law. And so I began to see things I didn't like. I don't like people who are going to be giving me orders and telling me what I can do and what I can't do. And they don't even have half the education that I do. They have no idea about the theology they're preaching. And then the more I began to suspect there was something wrong, I began to look deeper into the real foundations of where Jehovah's Witnesses came from. And boy, when I did that, I opened up a can of worms that just affected me terrible. It affected my whole life, because I began to see who they really were and where they really come from and what they were actually doing as a cult. The people didn't know, but the elders, the men who were guiding the organization, they were guiding the organization as a corporation. they had a business. It was like a business to them, and they were protecting their position in the business, in the company, and they were protecting each other, and they had double standards, and they would lie and they would cheat. And so I began to see that double standard, and then the more I saw it, the more I knew I've got to find out more about this organization I'm involved in, because I love the people I live with. They're very kind and courteous to me, and they've been very helpful. But on the other hand, they don't know what I know. They have been involved with Jehovah's Witnesses for so long. And me, I'm more a free-thinking individual that wants to know for myself. And so I started doing outside research. And I was living continually at USC and UCLA and the Pasadena had a world-class theological library, enormous library, many floors of theology and religion, and I lived over there. I was always there reading and researching religion and theology and where things come from. But it wasn't until one day I happened by chance to be up in Palmdale, California, which was about 50 miles north of Los Angeles. And I went up to see a publisher that I had been talking about. And he had some really interesting books about the ancient world and the cults and the secret societies and government. And I was heavy into that. I got very heavily into the secret societies that run the world. And I saw an article that was published by someplace in Europe, and he had this published this map of all the occult religions of the world, and I bought it from him. And in it showed where the secret societies had formed themselves in Europe. And behold, on that chart, it said Jehovah's Witnesses. And I looked at that, and it shocked me, because I knew there was something going on in New York, and why the organization was in Brooklyn, because I knew Brooklyn was a center for organized crime in America. Brooklyn has always been the center for mafia, for the five mob families. And I knew that Brooklyn was well known for being a center for crime and criminality in America. And why Brooklyn was in New York, and why New York was called the Empire State, and what connection did New York have with Rome and the Vatican. And so the more I began to look at this whole secret society of Freemasonic secret societies in Europe, especially England, that was organizing and directing the flow of the power of Jehovah's Witnesses around the world. And then it finally began to become overwhelming and obvious to me that Jehovah's Witnesses were a secret society, or run by a secret society, owned and controlled by a secret society out of London, a part of the British Empire. And the connections with the pyramid, and connections with all the measurements of the pyramid, and the astrological implications of the times in which we're living, it all became very obvious to me over a period of about 6 months. The more I was studying the secret stuff, the more I began to see that Jehovah's Witnesses, the wonderful people, I have no problem with the people, but the organization was actually founded by a secret society of Freemasons, both in America and in England. And the MI5 and MI6, which is British Secret Service, were heavily involved in the prophecy writing and the prophecies that supposedly are happening through the Bible. All of this stuff is being manipulated by a religio-political secret societies of Freemasonry, period. And when that finally dawned on me that this is what I'm involved in, I began to quietly, shut myself off. And eventually I was finally kicked out. I was summarily relieved of my position and told, we don't want you around here anymore. I was told I went to New York, and I actually visited in New York with the governing body because I was so zealous that I knew so many people in New York in the governing body headquarters. They invited me to go there, and I went to New York to visit with the governing body in New York City. And while I was there, they asked me, I sat and had breakfast, lunch, and dinner with the governing body, with the 12 men on the governing body. And I visited with them while I was there. And they asked me if I would like to come to New York and go to work for the Watchtower Bible Tract Society as a researcher, because they were impressed with what I was doing and what I knew and what I was talking with them about. I didn't let them know that I knew who they were, but I was letting them know that I was well aware of the secret societies in operation in the Middle East. And so I was asked by one of the members of the governing body. I met with a group of them in the library, and I sat with them, and they asked me, would you like to come to work here at Bethel and work for us and be in our research department and help do the research for us? And so I realized that they were always exposing the false religions of this world, all the cults and the Catholic Church, etc. And so I was totally in agreement with that. But I thought to myself, no, you better not. You better wait. You may be getting yourself into something you don't want. So I refused to go to work at Bethel. Bethel is the name of the headquarters. The original writings were back in 1871. That's when the original first Watchtower Society magazine came out, and it was not called Christian's Watchtower or Jesus Watchtower. It was called Zion's Watchtower. And the emphasis was always from the 1871 to the 1930s, always the emphasis was on Zion. And in the very beginning, Charles Taze Russell was in business with another man. What was his name? He was the founder of the Second Adventist, or the Seventh-day Adventist movement. William L. Miller was his name. William Miller. William Miller was from England, and he was doing well in America promoting the Second Advent movement, which later became known as the Seventh-day Adventist. And so Charles Taze Russell was his student and was listening to and going to the church that William L. Miller had in Philadelphia. And eventually Charles Taze Russell began following William L. Miller and the Second Adventist movement, which later becomes known as the Seventh-day Adventist. And so eventually Charles Taze Russell had money. He was rather wealthy. He was a very wealthy businessman at the time. So he had a falling out with the views of William L. Miller. He had different views about Jesus and about the way things were going to happen. So he started his own movement, and dropped out of the Second Adventist movement in Philadelphia. And this is why Philadelphia is called the city of brotherly love, because it's not people loving each other, brotherly love. The reason why it's called Philadelphia is called the city of brotherly love is because the brotherly comes from the Masonic order, the Masonic brothers. They were the brothers of the Masonic Lodge, and so they worked together. And so that's why the Bible says, that it's a city of brotherly love. Brotherly meaning a Masonic brothers, not the people. And so when I began to see the connection between the Masonic order out of London, the British Grand Lodge Masonic operation, and I began to see the profoundness of this organization's connections to the secret societies of Freemasonry, it became very obvious to me after a while what I was finally involved in. And so I eventually left the organization and went on my own and lived by myself and started doing some really in-depth investigation of the Bible and religion and Freemasonry and secret societies and the occult orders behind world banking, behind world government. And the more I looked, the more I found. And it was an extraordinary world of opening my eyes to the world of secret societies. And that's what I've been working with ever since, all the way back to 1960. Mm-hmm. And so I really have come to understand that Jehovah's Witnesses, as a people, the regular people that normally go there, there's a lot of very nice people, very, very nice people. And they're very polite, and they're very concerned about each other, and they're concerned to help. And they're just good people, but they're being taken advantage of by very powerful secret societies that are misleading the people of this world. And the same powers behind the throne, so to speak, that's already behind Jehovah's Witnesses are the same powers, the same people, the same money behind the Mormon Church, the Seventh-day Adventist Church, the Second Adventist Movement, the Worldwide Church of God, the Christadelphians, and all the other, what we today call the York Rite cults in America. It's founded by members of the Masonic Order and the York Rite, which is a Christian rite of Freemasonry. And the York Rite cults, like I said, are the Mormon Church, the Seventh-day Adventists, Christadelphians, Worldwide Church of God, Herbert W. Armstrong. All of these are Masonic order churches. And Jehovah's Witnesses, one of the tightest and well-financed around the world. But it's going to fall apart soon. All of these churches and all these cults are going to collapse soon. And when they do, there's going to be a tsunami of heartache and tragedy the world has never seen before. Because when you get millions of people believing in the coming God's kingdom of the earth, and God's going to do this, and God's going to do that, and He's going to bring about a wonderful kingdom in which everyone will be happy. And when you find out that that's nothing more than a Masonic folklore based on secret societies and lies and deception, and the very foundations for all of these cults and societies is actually based on a secret societies out of Europe. And eventually they're going to fall apart because they cannot continue. No lie can live forever. And absolutely. Eventually people have been, Jehovah's Witnesses have been talking about since the 1870s, talking about the end of the world, the end times, the last days and the end of the world when the whole world is going to be destroyed. 1889 and 1890, and then it was supposed to happen in 1914, and then it was supposed to, and then they came out with new revelations about, no, it's not going to be 1914, it's going to be 1929 or 25, or 1940 something is going to be the end of the world, right. And then they finally came out big. The Watchtower Society finally made a big to-do about the year 1975. That's when the whole world was going to end, in the fall of 1975. And so there was a big push to go out and get all the members you could, and the members should get rid of their property, sell their property, and donate money to the organization of Jehovah's Witnesses, because you're not going to need your property after 1975. You're not going to need it in 1976 because it's not going to be here.
Right.
The end of the world is coming. Well, that was back in 75, and that was the big one. That's the big final conclusion to the whole world. Well, we're still here, and we're still talking about the end of the world. And Jehovah's Witnesses are finally beginning to catch on that something is wrong. Right. We've been talking about the end of the world since the 1880s and 1975, and here we are at 2019. It's still here. The poor get poor, the rich get richer. The whole world is being orchestrated and run behind the scenes by secret societies. And so it's becoming well known, and finally people are beginning to see that there's something going on in New York with Jehovah's Witnesses. Who are they really? And what's really going on? And where's the money coming from? And who's financing it? And on the front of the dollar bill, it says, "In God we trust." Who put that on there? The Vatican had that put on the dollar bill, not Americans. The Vatican insisted that in 1951 or 52, the Vatican insisted that the president put that quote on the American dollar bill, "In God we trust," because of the rise of world communism. They wanted to establish that we were the new Roman Empire, and that the Holy Father who talks to God, he was our Godfather. And that's what the whole New World Order is all about. And in order to put all of this together into a militaristic operation to make it happen, in the 1500s, it was decided to start an organization to promote this New World Order, absolute totalitarian fascist world order in which the whole earth would bend its knee to the coming of a new power in the world, which is the Roman Empire coming back to life in America and New York, the Empire State. And the prophecies that are being written, that have been written in the Bible, that seem to be indicating something terrible is coming on the earth, I believe it is. I believe that there is a totalitarian fascist world government that's coming on the earth, that every human being, no matter where he is on the planet, will be under absolute total iron fist, iron heel of a boot, so that there will be no longer any ideas or concepts of human freedom or liberty or justice, nothing. There will be one final government in the world in which the secret societies of Freemasonry will finally be able to bring it together and get all mankind to agree to go along with it, and go along. Why? Because it's already obviously God's kingdom, and you don't want to be against the Lord, so you want to go along with God's kingdom. Discovery Channel and National Geographic and all these other Masonic orders that are operating in our radio and television world that are promoting these ideas, and they are making it happen. That's the best way to have prophecy, is to be in a position to make it happen. So you write down what you want to happen, and then you make it happen with money and political power. You make the prophecies come true. Right. David Icke has been talking about that for a long time, how you present the power, you present the problem, then you present the solution. But they never realize the same people who are presenting the solution are the ones who created the problem. Mm-hmm. And so that's what's going on today, that the secret society out of Europe and out of London is writing the whole script for what we call religion in America today. It's all being orchestrated out of MI5 and MI6 out of London, British Secret Service, British secret societies, political societies and religious political movements. And it's really quite a story, and it takes many years to study it. And I've been looking at it for the past 50 years, and I'm well aware of how this stuff really works. Yeah, well, you have to appreciate the people who actually wrote the Old and the New Testament were very, very wise secret society members of occult and secret orders in Europe. And they wrote all kinds of strange stories because they knew what was coming. They know what the powers that be are going to do. They were members of the secret societies themselves who wrote the Bible. So they know what the ideas that are already floating around Europe and around the world, what the powers that be behind the scenes were going to do and what they wanted to do. And so they wrote those prophecies into the Bible so that the people would be prepared for them. That's why you have Jehovah's Witnesses. So Jehovah's Witnesses were nothing more than a front for a secret society of Freemasons coming out of England and Europe. And this is the same people who gave you your Bible and gave you your sacred texts. Right. It's all been a master conspiracy for thousands of years, and most people do not have the wherewithal to wrap their mind around something so vast and so deep and so profoundly important. Most people cannot even fathom such a thing happening. It all can be traced back to India, to the Hindus. That's a fact, and so now you've heard the truth. That's a fact of the matter. Is that Judaism and Christianity has come directly out of the Hindu religion. And that's why in India they still have the holy cow. They still venerating and holding holy Taurus the bull. Mm-hmm. And then of course the Jews are now blowing the ram's horn. And then Christianity is now the two fish of Pisces. And now we're told about the coming of the age of Aquarius. It's all astrology from day one. It is time for the human race to wake up and understand the churches have misled you.